First atomic bomb lit up the sky, it didn't just end a war. It kicked off a brand new, terrifying race. A race built on spies, on deception, on secret deals, all to get a hold of the world's most dangerous technology. So how on earth did this power spread from just one nation to almost a dozen? Let's trace that chain reaction.
I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the sheer desperation, the high-stakes drive that pushed nation after nation to join the nuclear club. This was never just about power. For so many, it was about survival, it was about national pride, and making absolutely sure they could never be pushed around again. So where does this story even begin? Well, it's not with a giant explosion. It actually starts with a pretty quiet discovery. Inside a German lab, all the way back in 1938, scientists there figured out something that was about to change the world forever: nuclear fission. And the fear was immediate. Just a year later, in 1939, you have Albert Einstein himself sending that now famous letter to the US government, basically screaming from the rooftops that the Nazis could turn this science into a weapon of unimaginable power. That warning shot kicked off the Manhattan Project, a massive, top-secret effort between the US, the UK, and Canada. The goal was simple: build the bomb before the Germans do. And by the time they pulled it off in July 1945 with the Trinity test, Germany had already surrendered. But the nuclear age was officially here.
Now, let's quickly get the science straight, because this is really important. The first bombs were fission bombs, okay? Think of it like breaking a big atom apart to release a ton of energy. But the game totally changed with fusion, what we call hydrogen bombs. Instead of splitting atoms, you're smashing them together, which creates a reaction hundreds of times more powerful. That difference is absolutely crucial for understanding the arms race that came next.
And this little moment just shows the level of spying that was happening from day one. I mean, just picture the scene. President Truman pulls the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin aside, thinking he's about to drop this world-changing secret. But Stalin, he doesn't even blink. Why? Because his spies had already gotten inside the Manhattan Project. He just gives a little nod, hiding how furious he was that the Americans had gotten there first. The Cold War was about to get very, very real.
Right, so that first atomic blast set off a massive political chain reaction. The American monopoly on the bomb? Well, that was never going to last long. The world's other major powers were scrambling to catch up and get their own key to the most exclusive and terrifying club on Earth.
And the Soviets moved incredibly fast. They'd already gotten suspicious when they noticed that American and British scientists had suddenly stopped publishing any research on nuclear physics. So, using stolen blueprints from the US and grabbing German scientists to double-check the data, they detonated their own bomb in 1949. That's just 4 years after the US. The nuclear monopoly was officially over and the Cold War arms race was on.
Now, you'd think America's closest ally, the UK, would be the next one in line, right? I mean, British scientists were essential to the Manhattan Project, and they had this thing called the Quebec Agreement that promised they'd share the technology. But nope. In a pretty stunning move of post-war paranoia, the US passed the McMahon Act in 1946, cutting off all information, just like that. They wanted to keep the nuclear secret all to themselves.
So the British were understandably shocked. They felt completely betrayed, and they realized that if they wanted to stay a major world power, they had no choice but to go it alone. The good news for them was they had the scientific know-how and, really importantly, a big supply of uranium. They worked like crazy, and in 1952 they tested their own bomb off the coast of Australia. The club now had 3 members.
Okay, so the superpowers are building up their arsenals, and now a whole new wave of nations start their own chase. But for these countries, it was less about a global showdown and more about national pride and this burning desire to not have to depend on anyone else.
For France, it all came down to one moment, the Suez Crisis in 1956. They felt deeply humiliated, like the superpowers were just treating them like a second-rate nation. Their president, Charles de Gaulle, was adamant that France would never again be dependent on the American military for its own defense. He said the bomb was essential for French sovereignty, and boom, in 1960, they tested their first one in the Sahara. Message sent.
The 5th member was China. Now, their story's a bit of a roller coaster. At first, the Soviet Union was helping its fellow communist state, trying to create a counterweight to the US and Asia. But then the alliance between China and the Soviets just crumbled over ideological disagreements, and the Soviets pulled all their experts and support, leaving China to figure out the rest on its own.
But what China did next, honestly, it's just staggering. After they tested their first basic fission bomb in 1964, it took them just 2.5 years to test a full-scale hydrogen bomb. To this day, that is the fastest leap from a simple atomic bomb to an advanced thermonuclear weapon by any country in history. Just incredible.
So the next chapter in this story is different. It's not really about the global superpowers anymore. Now it's all about intense regional rivalries, secret programs hidden from the world, and a desperate will to survive.
And speaking of secrets, maybe the most mysterious member of the club is Israel, which even today has a policy of never officially confirming it has nuclear weapons. The whole secret was blown wide open by this incredible, movie-like spy story. In 1986, this technician, Mordecai Vanunu, snuck a camera into a top-secret facility and took photos. But before the story could get out, he was lured into a honey trap by a Mossad agent, kidnapped in Rome, and then smuggled back to Israel, where he spent 18 years in prison. His actions pretty much confirmed to the world what everyone had long suspected.
Now this is a perfect example of a direct tit-for-tat arms race. So India is stuck between its two big rivals, China and Pakistan. In 1974, they conduct what they cheekily called a peaceful nuclear explosion. Well, that absolutely terrified Pakistan, who immediately launched their own secret program. Then, when India conducted official weapons tests in 1998, Pakistan responded with its own tests just a few weeks later. And look at the difference in doctrine. India says it won't strike first. Pakistan makes no such promise.
This slide tells one of the most unique and, frankly, hopeful stories in this whole saga. Feeling totally isolated because of its racist apartheid regime, South Africa actually built 6 nuclear bombs. But then, they did something no other country has ever done. They gave them up. As it became clear that the apartheid regime was going to fall, the white minority government got scared of the weapons falling into the hands of Nelson Mandela's incoming government. So they dismantled their entire arsenal, the only country to build the bomb and then walk away.
And that brings us to the most recent member of the club, North Korea. For them, the motivation was simple and singular: regime survival. The Kim family was convinced that without the bomb, it was only a matter of time before the U.S. would invade. What makes them totally unique, though, is that they're the only nation to have signed the international treaty promising not to build nuclear weapons, only to turn around, withdraw from that treaty, and build them anyway.
So, where does that leave us today? Because the story is far from over. The nuclear threat has just evolved. It's moved into the shadows, deep beneath the oceans, and it's sitting just under the surface in states that could cross that nuclear line at any moment.
You know, a lot of people think the bombs are just in silos at home, right? Well, not exactly. As a legacy of the Cold War, there are still American nuclear weapons stationed all across Europe. And just recently, Russia moved some of its weapons into Belarus. But the real doomsday weapon, the ultimate deterrent, it's the submarines. They can hide for months at a time, making sure that even if their home country were completely wiped out, they could launch a devastating counterattack from anywhere. It's the ultimate guarantee of mutually assured destruction.
And then there's this really important concept, threshold states. Take Japan, for instance. It has incredibly advanced rocket technology and huge stockpiles of plutonium from its civilian nuclear power program. Now, its constitution forbids it from having nuclear weapons, but most experts agree that if the political situation in Asia were to change dramatically, Japan could probably develop and build its own bomb in a matter of months. And that leaves us with this one final, crucial question. The science behind a basic atomic bomb is now over 80 years old. The knowledge is out there. So what's really stopping the next country from joining the club? Well, the answer isn't science anymore. It's not even technology. It's politics. And that might be the most unpredictable and dangerous variable of all.